Welcome to Higher Intelligence, smart takes on AI for the next generation campus. I'm JC Bonilla, a tech executive, data scientist, and educator. Each week, we cut through the noise and decode what's actually mattering for your institution. AI Explained for higher ed. So, my friends, this week, one number got me thinking a lot. And today, we've prepped for it, and I'm really excited to be introducing our guest. So let me give you context on this number. Entry-level tech jobs dropped 73% in 1 year. 73%. And this is not because the industry is shrinking. It's because AI is restructuring the floor level on labor markets. So today's conversation is about the labor market. It's about education. It's about how AI is shaping the labor markets, but also how do we teach AI through our curriculums. And here's the part of the hardest thing in higher education. Look at this stat. Only 23% of recent graduates say their school is giving them extensive AI training for their careers. So are they getting themselves somewhere else? Are we complementing? Are you part of that 23%? So two interesting numbers. So today I'm joined by someone who's actually working in closing the gap between the 73% who feels their jobs may be not there, or the 23% that feel that they're actually being prepared by their academic institution. I am super excited to have Christopher Porter, the director of the AI program, Artificial Intelligence program at Drake University. He's building the curriculum. He knows what's actually working in the workplace. He is actually with a perspective of what higher education needs to do, how fast it has to happen, and he's doing it himself. Christopher, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me on here, JC.
Of course. Before we jump in, where are you in the world? Talk about Drake University and just kind of give the opportunity of what's this incredible AI program that you are shaping. You're the director. You're also a faculty member there. You have a background in computer science and mathematics. So, my friend, you're the real deal. So tell me what's happening at Drake and what are you working on?
Yeah, sure. So I am a professor here at Drake, and I came to Drake in 2016 as a faculty member on the math side of my department, which is mathematics and computer science. And at that time, artificial intelligence was something that we were looking at as an elective in our CS curriculum.
I remember that.
Yeah. We had just started a data analytics major in 2015. And so we had some machine learning. So we were starting to kind of ramp up a bit. And my background is in, as I said, math, but I did a joint PhD in math and philosophy. So I've really been interested in kind of issues of computation, kind of from a bunch of different perspectives. And in the year 2019, our president came to us, pulled a group of us together and said, hey, what would it look like for Drake to have an AI program? Which to me is kind of a bit of a shock to have that question, because I think we're not a Carnegie Mellon, we're not a Stanford, right? You have a department with 200 computer scientists, you could put an AI major together as a subset of it. But we have only, at the time, maybe 6 faculty members. We're up to 8 now. How can you have a subset of computer science already, when that program that we have is not as large as one of these massive institutions. But the model that came together was, we're going to invert that. We're going to start with a foundation of computing and then expand it to play to Drake's strengths. So courses in philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, linguistics, law, design, business, and really pack out an AI curriculum that was probably 4 or 5 years ahead of what the market demanded. That was kind of a wild thing for us. So we built this thing out not knowing that AI in the outcomes and the descriptions, everything could be expanded into generative AI until fall of 2022, when we realized, the wave we were trying to get ahead of, here it is, it's coming.
The time compression on these milestones, it's so insane, right? So the fact that you're speaking 5 years ago, we're doing this, in 4 years, we're doing it again, and you say generative AI, where we're at today, it's so fast, right? And all these timelines in terms of the AI relativity theory, right, if you were to call it, it's so fascinating. Just quick question. Is this version 2, version 3, or version 25 of this program? Where you guys are at in this evolution of it, because it's so fast.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we had to update on 2 different levels. So one is, we've got 17 courses that a student has to take. and we can modify what gets taught in those courses without having to tear the whole thing down. So there's some of the curriculum which is foundational, right? Digital ethics doesn't change in its significance, it just changes in its subject matter. All right, we're doing more AI ethics now than we've ever done. Our machine learning course, well, when that was developed for our data analytics major, no one was talking about transformers. Okay, so we better put
machine learning, such a vintage term right now.
Yeah,
machine
right.
learning.
So that gets updated to like, okay, what does the transformer architecture look like? We have a classical AI course, and we put in RAG, retrieval augmented generation. Like we were trying to put in relevant current topics so that students weren't learning outdated material. The second piece was, okay, again, not tearing this thing down, but it looks like industry demands require us to do a bit more thematically that can't necessarily be done with the blueprint that we have. So we had, just because of some personnel issues, we lost a course that was taught in the business school, a statistical modeling course, and we replaced that with a generative AI course. And then we added an 18th course, which was a choice between computer vision and natural language processing. But we had this expertise on hand to develop that. It was just that the degree we built was great as a foundation, but in terms of like deepening our students' understanding, we just really needed to add a little bit more. And I think now we're just rolling that out. So in fall of 26, that'll be our seventh year of the major. We'll have this kind of slightly expanded curriculum, but by and large, I think what we've put together is something that's stood the test of time.
Incredible. Well, we're going to get more the opportunity in our second part of the episode to go back into some of these things that Chris is talking about. These are fundamentals. Think about the blend between AI and philosophy. I think that's a really interesting thing to come and unpack. It's playing well on how Drake, I guess, has defined his own academic credentials. And is, as we know, every academic institution has this je ne sais quoi that makes you unique and different. And I think it'll be very interesting for you to start letting us think of why the vision, the philosophy of teaching and preparedness towards AI is blending all these type of things. So ethics, philosophy, I really like where you're kind of going here. But first, let's go back to two news that I think shaped today's conversation. And I look forward to hearing from you, Chris, the academic, the AI expert, the human, and your take on them, right? And obviously the first one, it starts with the number that I dropped, that 73% collapse in labor market. So let me expand the story, right? We start with a number, and it's getting a ton of attention in certain higher education circles. Entry-level tech jobs dropped 73% in 1 year. But at the same time, right, roles relative to AI systems and kind of AI-enabled product development increased 163%. So we're starting to see that the industry is not shrinking. What is shrinking is a type of job, what I call that kind of low-hanging fruit in the hierarchy of, value production in the chain, right? So here's really what is driving it. Think about this. Software engineering jobs, in the pyramid of software engineering, there's a junior layer that AI does much better. And Chris, you probably trained a lot of software engineers in your career. You've been around this, but like, how do you write and how do you code entry points, like C CRUDs or CRUDs, right? How you convert UI design points? How do you do kind of unit testing, fixing straightforward bugs? Those are the training grounds where the entry level professional makes his chops, and moves on. And these are exactly the tasks that AI is replacing. So many companies are reorganizing around smaller teams of experienced engineers. So that's probably the expansion that we saw in the other number, 163 expansion. Cannibalizing, I think that's the word, cannibalizes the lower entry level, right? And executives are being smart. So reporting says that executives believe the productivity has doubled. I'd like to see your take on that. Whether or not that is accurate, it is the belief that reshaping the headcount decisions, if I get a more senior person, maybe I have to pay more for him or her, then I don't need these 2 or 3 junior engineers. So Christopher, what's your take on that 73%? Let me also add the second layer, 163% of overworked in the midst of this very interesting 2026 class that is about to graduate and the ones that we've been seeing. What's your take here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that number is it's a large number, and I guess here at Drake we haven't felt that number. It's not like we've seen 73% of our grads struggle. I think that there's been shifts, right? There's been some rearranging of what entry level positions our students are going into, and where they're even conceiving of like what counts as a job for me. All right, 5 years ago, I am going to major in CS and AI, put those together, and I can see myself becoming a software engineer. Now, students are starting to think, well, we've got a broader range of options where my skills are still useful. A marketing firm might need an AI specialist to come in and help grease the skids and help find ways to boost what teams are doing. And that requires, knowing how the AI tools work, knowing how the business operations, what those processes are, and then how to put those together, and then how to think about, testing, auditing, governance. There's a lot more to that role. And so I have students now that are getting jobs as AI incubators, like that's the name of a job, or we're seeing ads for AI practitioners or automation analysts, that sort of thing. So here at Drake, I do think that, part of it is just being in a place like Des Moines where you have insurance companies that are saying, oh, we're tech companies now. And so, what counts as a tech company gets brought in beyond kind of the standard. We're finding our students being a little bit more resistant to those changes, right? Because I think the curriculum has gotten them more adept, more agile to kind of respond to the shift. It's not that the holes are closing up. It's just that they're opening at different layers. And, I agree that entry level side of things is really, worrisome on the front of, or on, with respect to students coming out of college, which is just book knowledge. Guess what else has book knowledge? AI, right? So we want tacit knowledge. We want like understanding that is something that's harder to replicate or automate. And I think that's the kind of thing we're trying to do in the classroom to help students find, at least in that other 27% opening, get those jobs that are there.
I think you mentioned a really interesting point here, right? The stats and the reporting suggest that these entry-level jobs that are being compressed, they look like and they feel like STEM type of programs, right? So we could talk about that. But you just also mentioned that you're starting to see all these marketers who are being hired because they are AI adjacent. Let's expand that. So your curriculum, your program, where you have an undergraduate degree in artificial intelligence, that's what is the actual degree that the student gets?
Yeah, so it is a degree in AI.
Is it like a bachelor's in science or BE?
Yes.
What is this?
I have a BS in artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence, lovely.
Yeah.
Question for you. Do you allow non-students from your major to take your classes? And if yes, like, are you seeing a lot of these marketers who just basically want to be adjacent? Kind of tell me the color of the classroom. Is it, I have 100 students and 80% of them are not in the BS and AI. How does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got the major and we've got a minor. And so students will take, there's some core courses that every student has to take, kind of an intro to the AI majors, class where I have 10 guest speakers from across campus speaking about AI in their own disciplines. But what I think has kind of worked for us, I mentioned earlier, we added this generative AI course that's starting this year, but we've been teaching it. So I'm teaching it this semester and I taught it last year, but I'm teaching it with a professor in the School of Journalism and Mass Communication. So I have a guy that I've been working with on creativity and innovation for about 10 years here at Drake. His name's Chris Snyder. And he has a background as a journalist. He has a background in social media. And so we just thought, let's put our heads together and think about how to take this material and make it accessible to folks who need it. And then on the side, we actually have a company where we're doing that work. We'll call it Innovation Profs. But in the classroom, we're trying to take all the insights that we're learning on the ground and bring them to the students. So we built this course that's cross-listed as a School of Journalism course and as an AI course. So the first time we taught it, we just said, let's make this as large as possible. So we have more than 60 students sign up for the class.
It reminds me a little bit of when data science came out. We started seeing data science done for mathematicians and computer scientists, but also data journalism, where data meets investigative reporting and versions of that.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's really where we got that marketing, design, communication, journalism angle, and have had a decent number of students coming through. And then as we've refined that course, we've tried to make it more practical. So to give you an example, right now we're in the last 2 weeks of the class. And we made a call out to the community. Anybody who has a problem that they want students to attempt to solve with AI, but you may not have the bandwidth to solve, let us know. So we got 10 projects, and then we put the students in touch with those folks, and now they're working, they're meeting with those people. We're telling them, treat them as a client.
Chris, I so want to apply to your program. You should be in recruitment. You're fantastic, and kind of getting all hyped here. Hey, here on the reporting, there was something that is kind of counterintuitive and somewhat of a bright spot. I wonder what you think about this. And maybe you already painted a picture that it's the kind of cross-academic, cross-functional view of your curriculum, right? So, but 77% of the graduates in 2025 who landed a job, they landed within 3 months of graduating. That's actually up significantly from the prior year. So there's something that says, fine, we're seeing compression, but the ones who are finding jobs, it was way faster. So graduates are finding work faster, but they're working harder for fewer options and accepting less than their degree should demand. It's also fair to say that in this reporting, we're starting to see that about 1 in 5 graduates say that they're overqualified for the current job. And also, nearly 43% of the U.S. college graduates aged between 22 to 27, they kind of feel underemployed, right? So there's something about, where is this taking place? And a lot of students are taking bridge jobs to cover expenses while keep on searching. So I don't know if this data that we're seeing is actually that I got a job in computer science because I studied computer science, but maybe I don't know, I'm just kind of swinging a barista job at Starbucks while this thing opens up. Talk to me about what you're seeing your students and through your, I guess, academic life. Who's crushing the job market today?
Yeah, well, I think there's multiple explanations, and I don't know what would account for, that rate of, or, that increase in how fast people are getting jobs. Is it that they know that there's a scarcity of jobs, and so, hey, I got an offer, so I'm going to just jump at it? But there's an alternative, and I don't know what this looks like at a global picture, but I would say here at Drake, one of the things that we find is that some of our kind of pathways and internship pipelines that we have mean that students are getting offers when they're finishing their junior years or in the summer between their junior and senior year. And so they're locking up those jobs early, and that helps them with that kind of secure, just knowing, hey, I'm going in my senior year. I already know the day after graduation, I turn around and I get started in this company. So that's something that for our graduates, it's not universal. I have 18 students in our senior capstone right now, and I've been trying to highlight all the work that they do on LinkedIn and post kind of like my AI All-Star series. And so I'm asking them, what are you looking for a job? Are you on the market? Where do you want to go? Do you have a place? And I mean, at least half of my students have jobs already locked up. And some of them, they have been working with a company because my first year at Drake, there was an internship program with this insurance company. We got plugged in and they've kept me on it every single year. And now I'm going to be an associate data scientist, already ready to go. So that part, I think, schools are wising up. We got to get our students connected to industry sooner. And having those industry ties just means that you're a more attractive candidate, not after graduation, but before graduation. And that, I think, is a great model. I mean, I feel like, more schools do that. That's just better for their students to prepare them and then just give them a better chance of being competitive on that market.
There's something really coming across in your vision as an academic program designer, and also the experience your students are getting. There's a very practical skill building type of program, right? Are you seeing that this is paying off in the pipeline? Because some STEM programs are starting to see application prospective students, the pipeline kind of generation stale or drop, which has not been seen in years. Are your application pool off the roof? Talk to me about what is the appetite and intent from the upcoming classes?
I think that we're seeing, CS as a isolated discipline. If you don't understand what computer science is and you think, oh, computer science is just programming, then headlines about programming jobs might give you pause. And I think that that's something that we're understanding right now. I'll say incidentally, our response is let's make our program a little more theoretical, systems-based. We hired a former student of ours to come back and teach systems courses to make it a little more, robot-proof. But then on the AI side, I don't think our numbers have changed. So, we're continuing on. I would say our AI major from 2020 to 2024 grew pretty quickly, and now it's kind of plateaued, but we've kind of kept it steady. So I think, there's also other trends about who's coming to Des Moines, Iowa for college. We're seeing more kids stay home. We're trying to do more outreach and connections to the broader Des Moines metro area and that sort of thing. There's growth going on here, so it's almost opposite the demographic cliff. But I haven't seen it tick to the point where, people know about these programs. The generative AI stuff is only just in the last year or two. And I think, university marketing, needs to be pushing that stuff out so that those success stories are kind of getting to the right people. So our numbers have stayed steady on that AI side, but I'm really eager to see those grow.
All right. One more question on this story, and then we'll pivot. Let's focus on those counterintuitive numbers, the one that actually have the hope. 75% of grads in 2025 landed jobs within 3 months. That's up from last year. Internship posting, 32% ahead of kind of year over year, right? So there's, oh my gosh, we think about internships, but the data suggests that there's actually a hiring forecast that is ahead of last year. Not forecast, actually numbers, right? Employers say that they expect to hire 5.3 more new grads this year. So this is the forecast. There's also intentionality to bring in more people into the labor markets. This is such an interesting thing because it's counterintuitive to what I'm seeing, the signals. So what do you tell or these academic institutions, how do you point at a student nowadays under this time compression, AI, incredible times, like internships, no internships? Look, when I went to school a million years ago, like there was a path, and the university pointed me in that direction, right? Go do your internship in the junior year, second internship, and you're gonna be good, right? If you want to do consultancy, you want to do engineering, like these are the paths. Like, how do you point to students nowadays? And I know this could be a whole episode, but the 30, 45 seconds on it, please.
Absolutely. So look, the students their brains are sponges. They keep up with what's going on. Like my AI students are really just immersed in this stuff. They're using it for all kinds of things. They keep track of all the changes in a way that gives them a more fluidity and flexibility. If you're an established researcher and established practitioner in industry, and you've got your workflow and you've got your things to do, like where do you carve out time to learn new things? Like, oh my gosh, Claude is just banging right now with all of the workflows and skills and Claude Code and Claude Design. They're just shipping stuff constantly. And if you're working, like you got to burn the midnight oil to learn that. But our students are just doing it now, right? So all of a sudden you have like ready-made experts that they can go, and as kind of, interns, you come in, a company isn't committing to a long-term relationship, but they're getting the pick of the litter, and they're bringing that expertise in. They're bringing that kind of up-to-date perspective and almost a kind of a willingness to take risks, to be daring, to try out new things. They don't even know what they can't do, and so they're just diving in. And so I feel like we have these young students who are really eager. I mean, I have first-year students that are already paired up with companies just doing kind of collaborative things to help those groups out. And that to me is the promise, is our students are on the cusp of learning, and they can bring that energy, enthusiasm, and expertise to a place that maybe is struggling to find the bandwidth to keep up with the changes.
I really love that. We're going to come back a bit more of your philosophy of teaching and how you're preparing the students, but the credential premium, isn't gone, right? I think that it's been reassigned, and there's ways to do that. So we'll learn more about your philosophy and what you're doing at Drake. I'd like to pivot a little bit on something that caught my eye. We know in academia, we love our rankings and reporting, but there's a new one that actually came out that caught my eye, and I'd love for you to kind of explain it with me, right? So Forbes released its 2026 new Ivy's list, right? And it's a really interesting list, right? Because there are 20 universities have been identified with input from over 100 C-suite and higher executives. So it's informed by corporate America significantly, as opposed to U.S. News and World Report that is informed by self-reporting from us and admissibility rates and GREs and SATs, all that kind of stuff, right? And this ranking is over-indexing, or if anything, is calibrated towards AI-driven workforce preparedness. In the list, it includes Carnegie Mellon, Georgia Tech, Purdue, UT Austin, Wisconsin-Madison, Northwestern, Rice, Vanderbilt, the works. Drake, I don't know why he didn't make it. It should have been there, but we'll talk about we'll talk to Forbes after this. The ranking criteria shifted significantly this year. AI readiness and employer hiring intent under AI conditions were the core methodology. So these are not just awesome schools. We probably recognize a lot of these academic institutions, but these are also schools where hiring executives are choosing to look into their programs and recruit that AI fluency they're just talking about. So AI fluency, in a way, is the filter. I'll stop there. What do you think of something like this? Forbes 2026 New Eyes ranking, where AI career readiness, it's the methodology. Where does your head go with this?
I think that there's, we love rankings and we love to see our names on those lists. I think that that's responding to the demands that are out there. And so I feel like the reasonable criterion for, where places are at. I noticed that Wisconsin featured prominently in discussions of like how they got onto that list, right? And that was taking a school of computing within their College of Arts and Sciences and just expanding it to an entire college of computing and AI. And that, comes with an incredible amount of resources. It looks like they weren't going gangbusters with hiring, but it had a really strategic focus about kind of building out those AI, aspects of, what they're doing there. This suggests there's this, multiple strategies for building out AI fluency in your institution, right? A resource-heavy institution is going to be able to make hires, to create new units, to really jumpstart that on campus in a way that, just brings those resources. Other schools like Drake, we really had to do it internally and not to, on the basis of here's this large gift that's going to push this thing ahead. We kind of introspect and say, who are we? Who do we have on our bench, and how can we put the pieces together to build something that meets the needs of our students? We didn't even know what those needs were. We just knew that they were coming. So, I like the list as in some ways aspirational, but we've always known we're small, but that just means we're nimble. And that just means like we're connected and we can build interdisciplinary units in a way that even with the existing personnel that we have, we got a lot of mileage out of that.
No, but if we were, these lists have incredible issues, right? The good and the bad of this list, and we can speak for ages here. But let's just pretend that, as an academic institution, you wanted to have more over-indexing towards this. Let's call it the AI readiness, right? And the perception that ranks like this will pick you up. Is this a curriculum problem? Is this a signaling problem, or is it both? Like, what do you think academic institutions like Drake needed to do? Should you want it to be listed there as 19, number 5, or even number 1? Like, is this a curriculum thing or something else?
Well, I think curriculum is part of it, but I also think that you can't teach students to be AI fluent without having access to the tools. So it's worked out for us. For instance, in our generative AI course, we rolled it out, and it came at the same time that Google said, hey, if you're a college student, you can have Gemini access for free for a year. We'll tell students, hey, dive on in. If you need some high-powered, larger usage limits, like this is the way to do it. But by and large, that's not our default, right? We don't, even for faculty here, it's not in the budget because people weren't, you budget a year ahead. We didn't think, let's create a budget for giving faculty access to these kinds of tools. So that's another sort of the aspect of this, I think, just resources. So even with our curriculum back in 2020 and beyond, we were able to teach the courses and do a lot of things in a lightweight way. But then post the launch of ChatGPT, making these tools really accessible in a sense of like anybody who can access tools. But if you really need to use them over a longer period of time, then you got to pay to play. Right? I feel like that's so a commitment to like, what does that look like? What's the model that allows us to have that level of access so we can build up those proficiencies, so we can build up that fluency. I think that, maybe a shift from AI literacy, you can kind of understand what's going on and understand the lay of the land. But fluency just seems like much deeper than that, right? To be literate, from being literate to being fluent, I think it does require being really enmeshed in how these tools work and using them and testing and Like we want our students to prompt well. You don't learn that just by reading a prompting guide. You have to practice it. You have to troubleshoot it. You have to build a prompt library and calibrate it and that sort of thing. So
you got to fail fast and pick up from there. Talk to me about the tech stack and the proficiency and readiness. How do you balance the commitment of, I'm going to have everyone be incredible Gemini? You just mentioned that. Is it a Claude? Is it ChatGPT? Is it all the above? It doesn't matter. How do you think about the tech stack commitments that you need to make on your academic programs? How do you prepare the students so that they can have that AI readiness that these ranks kind of say it's important?
Yeah, I do think that it's good news that there are these alliances among different LLM companies, right? So Drake is a Microsoft shop. So we all have
Copilot type of thing.
Exactly, right? And all the students can by default access Copilot chat through their Microsoft account. And those are powered by the GPT models that OpenAI puts out. But now increasingly Microsoft's trying to diversify its portfolio. And so now you can find some of the Claude models in there, right? If our IT department turns on access to those. So, you're kind of getting access to those models across these, different platforms. But also a lot of students still have their own Gmail accounts. And so you can get on Gemini and do this thing. So it isn't really a matter of like, which specific platform do you want to use? They all have pros and cons. I feel like Claude is really on the rise in some really, clever kind of infrastructure developments that they're making and just kind of broader ways to do generative AI in a powerful way. So I feel like, my IT folks, they just love Microsoft Copilot because they're worried about data leakage. They're worried about enterprise data protection. They're worried about models being trained on data that shouldn't be. And a lot of those are already kind of guaranteed in the Microsoft suite of things to be kind of controlled. That's less so with something like individual ChatGPT licenses. So, kind of shadow AI is a thing that they want to watch out for. And so if there is a way for a university to build on the existing structure that they have, if they're already a Microsoft operation, then that seems like a natural shift to add Copilot to that, right? Again, pros and cons with all of these. And I think that, we've done some experimenting with that. We have a working group that's trying to figure out strategically what's the next step, who gets access to what, how do we determine that? And I think that those are conversations that every university either is having or should be having. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. One of the data points that caught my eye, and I think this is the place very, very core at your vision and what Drake is doing as well. 69% of the US organizations reported that, there's a gap between AI skills, right? And this is basically quantified and documented. Within this data, one skill came out to be really, really important: AI ethics and policy, like as a top skill that is missing. How do you think of this, right? This is not a technical skill, right? This is judgment, governance, humanities skills, and it's hard to teach, right? So are universities in a better or worse position to teach this when you're competing for, is it Copilot, is it Gemini, is it like, probabilistic thinking? How is higher education and specifically Drake actually doing this? Because it's one of the hardest things to teach, in my opinion, today.
Absolutely. And I think that we've been having conversations internally here about teaching what we used to call computer ethics, which now, became digital ethics, which is overlaps so significantly with AI ethics. And that's a really tricky thing because there can be this impulse to say, well, such and such company has these videos, so that's our training. Like, just go watch these videos. But like doing computer ethics or digital ethics or AI ethics is something that's elaborate because it really involves understanding the kind of core ethical issues that arise in practice and then thinking about ways to resolve them. But often that's not just like having debates. Sometimes you solve these issues by making technical developments, by building governance structures. So like who's got the expert to handle all that, the expertise to handle all that? Well, I do think that universities have people who think about policy. They have, a lot of, I don't know the percentage, but like so many universities employ philosophers who are critical thinkers, who have training in ethics. They understand like what ethics is. Now, I'm not suggesting they need to like start telling us about utilitarian ethics and Kantian ethics as it applies to AI.
Sounds fun. That
it's
sounds
cool,
fun.
but like if that's all you do, we're just scratching itches and we're not solving problems, right? So
That's right.
how do we like move that along? So you say, yeah, there's these grounding, we ground these questions in the way that we deliberate in some of these traditions, but like let's think about what is a framework for dealing with algorithmic bias? What's a framework for dealing with privacy or security issues? Like, okay, so we can find tons of people doing work on like what are different aspects of privacy? Like what does that even mean? Like how are violations of privacy even possible in the age of kind of data saturation that we're in? I mean, okay, clearly there's a lot that can be said there, but now you're like, okay, what's the governance structure? Like what does that look like when it meets the ground? Like imagine I'm a IT person or I'm legal counsel for a company and I have to come up with a policy for protecting privacy, and we have a new vendor that's saying, here's this tool that we want to use. Like you got to think about like what's the auditing that has to be done. A lot of that compliance stuff, you find people in the business school who can handle that. You've got expertise in your university, but maybe they're not directing that expertise towards AI. But I feel like that's just one degree removed from a lot of the kind of expertise that people already have. So I would say, you know, Drake was able to do that. We drew on expertise. Some of it was like already AI grounded and some wasn't. But those people who weren't in that just repurpose what they were doing in the direction of thinking about AI, and then it allows us to have something that kind of covers those bases.
Talk to me about the expertise. Is it hired? Is it difficult to hire these faculty positions? How are you doing with your own talent pool to teach these people? Because I also have to tell you that if AI professional today is a high commodity, so are you competing with $400,000 plus salaries because OpenAI would like to hire the same faculty member?
Yes, I think that there's an opportunity for academics in a number of different disciplines to capitalize on this gap, right? So when we hire in computer science, for instance, versus something in the humanities, the pool is just very, very different, right? It's already much smaller. And so I think that we've found success, for instance, of mathematicians saying, I understand like theory of computation and a lot of computer science concepts I'm already familiar with, or it's connected to my work. And so we've ended up hiring mathematicians that in their own market aren't those AI professionals or CS professionals, but then they pivot in a way that allows them to succeed. In a sense, that's my own journey. But also, I would say on the, you know, if you look at what AI is so interdisciplinary. If you take a textbook in AI, there's a lot of things like logic and probability theory and even the classic textbooks of, you know, Norvig and Russell, artificial intelligence, like Bible, that has some philosophical stuff in there and a lot of things that seem like the kind of thing you might even learn in philosophy curriculum. So philosophers can pivot, or they can pitch themselves as, you know what, I'm AI adjacent because I think about these concepts in my own work, but those concepts get applied in AI all the time. So I would say like Drake has been able to exploit that and find pockets of folks who are AI adjacent and are willing to make the adjustments to kind of meet the needs that we have.
There's something really pragmatic on, you know, agentic AI today, right? That is the quest of productivity. And what I find super fun, right, is that everyone is able to work faster, right? So I produce this email, it's faster. I now have a workflow. It allows me basically to get, you know, an hour back so I can redeploy it somewhere else. How we transfer that into impact and, you know, cost and revenue, that's a different conversation. But in the quest of productivity, who cares about ethics? Who cares about all these constructs that you just kind of mentioned? Because there's something really pragmatic that is starting to come with agentic AI that I just wonder, do we care? And then we're just going to be balance the world of the ethics and the higher level thinking, in a way you just mentioned about AI, when on the other hand, I have agentic AI that is just basically trying to push me to work faster and next task.
Yeah. I think there's part of it, you know, you can think about ethics as in just like the list of right and wrong. It's like, do this, don't do that. But there's also, you know, ethics as more of, you know, developing a certain way of being, like good character, or, you know, developing an outlook that encourages human flourishing, right? And so it's not just like, oh, what are the do's and don'ts that I need to follow to be a human that flourishes? Like, I don't think that that's the way to answer that question. So I think about, you know, we want to embody certain practices that make our lives meaningful and that give us a sense of control or a sense of purpose. And I think that, AI it's like a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, if we cut away the noise that's keeping us from the higher aspects of the things that we do for my job, what's the best thing? Student-facing, connection, being able to mentor students. It's like the very relational side of things, versus, oh my gosh, my inbox is flooded with questions about advising, that if they looked up the right thing, they know where to go. Okay, so can I automate the noise that frees me up to do the things that make me feel like I'm actually flourishing? That's like the best part of my jobs. Or I could just automate everything, right? Actually, I don't even need to meet with my students anymore, because I built a GPT that will just like do all the advising and then I just feel like I've missed out on something, right? That missing out, is that an ethical failing? Like, did I violate some rule out there? No, but I just feel like I just missed out on something that could have made life better. So that, in a sense, it's almost like ethics as it merges into aesthetics. Like, I want to live a life that's like beautiful, meaningful, right? To me, that seems like AI can help with that. But also, if I just automate everything away, then maybe I've become kind of too dependent on it in a way that cuts short some of the things that might give me a sense of fulfillment.
It's very interesting, because this foundational thinking you're talking about is very practical, right? In the outset of my question, it's this big level thinking, it's unpractical. But what you just did really nicely is like, the practicality of automating my entire week needs to be incentivized by some type of premises or values, who I want to become as an individual and where do I learn to do that. That's an incredible journey. And I really appreciate that kind of the mini lecture. Again, keep on selling that program, Professor Porter. I love it. Let me switch you to the stuff that actually has a shelf life. And, we just spoke about the things that in a way they don't change. The ethics of technology, AI, I can have a conversation with you in a month from now, and you probably give me the same example. But when we look at the tech stack, the technology is changing so fast. So my question is, how do you design curriculum against a tech stack that I cannot even keep up as an AI expert? I cannot keep up with Claude alone, and never mind what OpenAI and Gemini and Microsoft are doing. So how do you balance, and how do you think about the tools and being contemporary? Because your kids, your students, your humans are going to come and they want to be holistic with that ground level thinking, but also having their lines in their CV of what the tools and the hot skills are today.
Yeah, JC, this is the question. I know it doesn't keep me awake at night, but it's a very pressing question. I've done this. I've had this happen to me now in the last 2 times I've taught generative AI, that something changes in the course of the semester later on that radically impacts what we would have done earlier if that technology were out. So a year ago, and actually, I mean, it's kind of the same culprit. We have a unit on image generation. We did that last year, and then ChatGPT Images, their first image tool came out and just blew everything out of the water. And the assignments that we had given the students, 3, 4
weeks why bother?
Yeah. And then the same thing happened. Like that improvement, the second version of ChatGPT Images this semester, I mean, it just came out like a week or 2 ago. Yeah. It's just so much far beyond what was happening before. But yeah, there's even, gosh, I'll give you an example that seems crazy. PowerPoint in Copilot seems like month to month the features are different. January of 2026, you're using Copilot in PowerPoint, and you can't do anything without a paid account. And then at the end of the month, or going into February, all of a sudden have agent mode, and now it starts to do new things. It can make changes. Oh, but you can't access it if you don't pay for it. And then, agent mode's gone, and now you have edit with Copilot. And now, okay, so that's great, but you still have to pay to play. Oh, okay, April 22nd, guess what? Now anyone can access it. You can have, my colleague Chris Snyder, we were doing this Copilot training with PowerPoint training with a company. He said, I have 2 laptops. I have the same version of PowerPoint on them, but I have different AI features in them. I don't even know why. That's just PowerPoint. That's just like one crumb in this vast feast of everything. It is really, really hard to keep track. The moment you say something, it's risky to be, it's like the risk of it being obsolete is like there.
So is it that then you don't teach at the cutting edge? Is it that you're teaching a fundamental skill so I can just pick up the next feature? So how do you balance that? That's why I'm asking you a question. It's super tough. So
I think we want our students to do, so right now we're like emphasizing process and their role in interacting with the tools. So when the tools change, they know how to pivot. If you used ChatGPT, GPT 5.4, and you wrote a prompt library and you had got really good at prompting it, when GPT 5.5 came out, they're like, all your prompts don't work anymore. Well, our students should be good enough to know, okay, I figure out how to calibrate my prompts to this model, and so now I'll have to calibrate new ones to that one. That's the flexibility that we want to have. They're not writing down in their tablets of stone GPT 5.4. That number is going to grow, it's going to change, and what the abilities are that's going to keep going. So if they're getting a mentality of new models keep coming, and I have to then revisit how that impacts the work that I do, if that's the takeaway from the class, then we won. That for us is that's the best takeaway. If they're just locked in oh, here are the 4 models that I'm really good at, and I'm just going to stick with those forever, and then we lose. I'm glad that they're using the tools, but you can't just, oh yeah, I only want to lock in on these versions of these models. That I just don't see that happening. The students are keeping tabs enough, and when new developments come, they're ready to dive in and see what can this do differently and better than the previous one.
Interesting. Let me do a derivative on this access issue that you just mentioned, right? So specifically through the lens of some of these features are, paid or premium or those type of things. So how do you start thinking about a student who arrives to Drake unprepared? Is there a minimum that you expect everybody to be at? So traditionally in STEM programs, we expect a level of mathematics for me to teach you calculus and things of that sort. So now let's talk about my background. I'm a student from Costa Rica. I have no CS background, no exposure to AI tools, and I want to major in business and education. Your program is, and I'm bringing your AI minor, right? So what is the entry point for that student? Is there an entry point? Is there some type of minimum AI literacy that works for an institution? And if anything, how do you level that playing field?
We want to meet students where they're at. So that means you come in and we figure out what background you have, and then we'll go from there. We're definitely open to modulating where students go with their math background or their computer science background. Oh, you need to take pre-calculus. Or, wow, you already took a year of programming, so you can skip computer science 1. Maybe you can skip computer science 2 and go straight to object-oriented programming. On the AI side, we don't really have that. I have some freshmen that have come in and I'm pretty sure they know 90% of the things that I've taught them already. They just knew that because they're just so into it. But then they're still okay, hey, here's this assignment. Let's go a little further, right? I want you to, you have 5 choices of the project you're gonna do. Here's the hardest one. I think you guys can do that. But then for other students, their point of entry is I'm afraid of this. I don't even use ChatGPT. Okay, well, by the end of the semester, it's I got pretty good at prompting, right? And what does that mean? It's just understanding a good framework for it, and then trying it out, and then iterating. And students have enough of a nose for maybe solving a problem or trying to you just, as long as you give them a good scaffolded assignment and you just have them work through it, then they'll build that skill. I feel like AI literacy is achievable if you build good assignments and you give them good access. You don't even need to need paid accounts at that entry level. I think that enough of the free accounts will do plenty for them. We'll do, in our generative AI class, audio and video, where credits will just burn up really quickly. All right, you got to work in a group of three or 4, and then stack your paid accounts so that you can basically cover the base. But that by and large though, they're getting it done.
I like that. Hey, 2 more questions and we'll wrap up. I'd like to just spend one question and sometime talking about graduate education. I know that's not your forte, but in the sector, in the industry, you may be hearing something. Traditionally, a graduate program, specifically professional masters, who have been a bread and butter of some tuition-driven institutions, part-time programs, all that kind of good stuff, right? They've been very good as shorter skill gap. So, hey, I have a background in economics, and I but I'm not a business person, so I would do an MBA, or if I'm very good at critical thinking. I'm an English person, but I don't have a credential on analytics, so I do an MS in analytics, those type of things, right? But these programs are very short, 1 or 2 years. So what do you think happens to AI education in terms of credentials and the skill tension? Because some of these grad students are going to come and become marketers, or an analyst or whatever, and then there's also the AI layer. Like, where do you see graduate education being shifted or impacted, if any?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like Drake has us as we've got some grad programs, and I've helped out with those. And I think I understand like what the pipeline of students coming in. So we often have partnerships with companies, and you'll have some like a team leader who is overseeing a team of analysts, but actually isn't themselves an analyst. Okay, so come do our Masters of Business Analytics so that you can understand what's going on. And I think that model has been and continues to be pretty stable. I think for the folks who are pivoting, I think that's a great opportunity. But you're right that this AI layer complicates that. Because if I'm someone who doesn't have an analyst background and I take a traditional data analytics degree, and then I'm like, okay, I'm ready for the market. And then employer's like, all right, so how are you using AI in your analytics work? And you're like, well, I don't. I just learned these. I'm really good at using R and SAS. But I've never taken any coursework or done any projects that involve an AI workflow. They're going to be like, well, you're a finalist, but here's this AI workflow person. Like, we're gonna go with them. So I think that programs that do have that ability to help people pivot just need to ratchet things up a bit. What's that AI layer look like? So the generative AI course I've been describing, we're trying to build we've got a graduate version called Applied Generative AI for Professionals. Who can take it? From my point of view, anybody, right? So I feel like I got to go to this College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences and say, hey, you got a grad program? Let the students take it. In law, there's a risk compliance law program, like a master's. Can your students take that? The School of Education, the MBA program. So at least get that plugged in. I think like that's going to be enough to get people's foot in the door to then enter the conversation, understand what the technology is, what it does, and how it's changing things. So I would say that model of graduate education, at least to keep up at a minimum, needs to figure out what's a point of entry that gets students aware of how AI is changing their professions. You're often teaching people who are in those professions or pivoting from one to another. And I feel like that differentiator is having some AI awareness coupled with the training that they're getting. I think that's vital.
One more question and then we'll wrap up. What's the Drake or the Professor Porter's bet here? So look out 1 to 5 years. If you can do 5 years, AI, it's making this time horizons super hard. But your graduates, the graduates that you produced, a couple hundred, hopefully, right? I don't know, 1,000. And the employers who are going to hire them, like the problems that they'll be equipped to solve. That's the spirit of my question. What does success look like? And how, like, what does doing this the right way, what is that bet going to be so that you basically, it looks like you match success? Do you understand the question? I'm trying to understand kind of that philosophy that you have in mind.
Yeah, you're forcing me to answer a question that is, I'm always trying to think of like what's here. And so then I will look ahead. I always find I'm an unreliable, forecaster. But what's ideal for me? What's optimal for me? I mean, I think about the pipeline. I'm very fortunate to be in a great city where there's both industry ties, but then also, we have a lot of great schools in Des Moines and a lot of great schools in the Des Moines suburbs and, the greater Des Moines area. And we're growing. We're actually seeing population growth here concentrated in this area, meaning more high school graduates. I would love to see Drake function as this pipeline where students come here and immediately find ways to, grow as students who aren't just like, oh yeah, I'm going to do technology so I can automate stuff, but just to come and be interdisciplinary, to be broad, to contribute to the growth that we're seeing in this area, and then to give back, right? So now it's like, I have students that I go to job fairs and they're like former students are hiring my students and like building those connections as my entry-level students become mid-career students who find it harder to to keep up? Can we help boost them, right? Get that kind of synergy going. So pre-Drake, through Drake, post-Drake, wash, rinse, repeat. I mean, I feel like to me, that would be really rewarding to see that kind of growth. But the other part of it is, I have this ambition that many of our students are broad enough that they're not just worker bees. I would love to see more CIOs and CITOs coming out of our program. And so if I had to pick like a dream or an ambition, I would love to see, 20, 25, 30, 50 students that are all CIOs that are thinking about strategy, about governance, about ethics, about trends and development and pushing the envelope and innovation and creativity. That to me would be a real achievement. And I feel like that would just reflect on what Drake offers as kind of, just the education that we have and, the programs that we've built out.
Look, this holistic view of what education is, right? Let me actually say it differently. Oftentimes I speak about AI and it's very doomsday. Like, shit, it's taking everything that we own, our jobs, our work. And there's something that I am encountering as I speak with you, that the humanity aspect, what makes me human, and it's not only the quest of productivity, it's how I go about it, and the embedment of the humanities, ethics, being human through the lens of AI is very real. And I so much appreciate that it seems that it's at the core what you're doing in the program, what Drake is doing. And again, if I was 20, again, I would probably apply to your program today because I think you guys are the real deal. So, Chris, exactly the conversation I wanted to have. Thank you so much. I think you're living the challenge that most institutions are theorizing about. And that's why this listening is worth twice or three times a week. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Let me wrap up with a quick summary. And again, thank you, Chris Porter. Thank you, Drake. Check out their program. If I want to know more about your program, where should I be going?
Drake.edu/AI gets you to our website where you can learn about what we're doing here.
Awesome. Great job, my friend, and really appreciate it. So the numbers from today are very simple. 73% collapse in entry-level tech jobs, but 23% of the graduates feel that they're being trained appropriately, and they're probably all coming from Drake and Chris's program, right? So a generation is adapting in real time to labor markets, and the move is happening faster than we all anticipated. So these questions that I just asked Chris about 5 years from now, who knows? Definitely not going to apply. But there's a small group of institutions and individuals like Chris who are building the answers while everybody else probably still meeting about it. So if you're leading a program, a department, a division, listen to this episode. The question today is very simple. Where are your graduates landing? Are they prepared for? Are they unprepared for all these complexity that we just described? And what would it take to close the gap between the next class and the next stage of AI? I'm JC Bonilla. This is Higher Intelligence, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to Higher Intelligence. This show is part of the Enrollify network, home to the largest collection of podcasts in higher education. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow. You can find more podcasts, webinars, videos, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe to get new content sent directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the AI agent platform for higher education. Learn more at element451.com.